All right, everyone, welcome. We thank you all for being here. We're just going to do a quick welcome, a prayer, and then we will introduce our speaker. We thank you for joining us. I'm Jerry Rassiopi. I'm the rector at Holy Spirit Church in Verona, and I'm also co-chair of the Namaste Anti-Racism Commission. And we are thankful that you've joined us for our third of three speaker series on race. Two of them were in November, and we are excited to have our third. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, cool. Our third speaker is tonight, and we are excited that she is here with us. But first, I'm going to turn it over to Michelle Simon, who will introduce herself, but also offer a prayer.
Thank you, Jerry. My name is Michelle Simon, and I worship at St. Paul's Church in Englewood. And I'm co-chair along with Jerry of the Namaste Commission. And I too welcome you to the last, but not the final, of a speaker series that we've been able to put together for you guys. Hopefully next year we'll be able to do much of the same. So I'd like to start with a prayer, and I think we can't hear this prayer enough. So you may have heard it before, and if you have, that's okay. But it's the prayer for social justice, and I think it's appropriate for tonight. Grant, O God, that your holy and life-giving spirit may so move every human heart, and especially the hearts of the people of this land, that barriers which divide us may crumble, suspicions disappear, and hatreds cease, that our divisions being healed, we may live in justice and peace through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Michelle. Bishop Hughes will be joining us shortly, but I'm going to go ahead, if Jane gives me the okay, to go ahead and introduce Dr. Meeks, and then we're going to turn it over to her. So I'm sure some of you are here because it's Dr. Meeks, and if you've read any of her books, that might be why you're online. And so we thank you for joining us. But Dr. Meeks comes to us from the Diocese of Atlanta. She flew in last night, and she's staying at the Robert Treat. No, I'm kidding. She's still in Atlanta, I assume. But she is the author of 7 books, and she's the founding executive director of the Absalom Jones Episcopal Center for Racial Healing, which I'm sure we're going to hear some about. And we are excited to have her with us at this time. She's also very much involved in prison work and faithfully visits a person who is formerly on death row and is very much a part of her story. And so we are excited to welcome her and hear what she has to offer, and hopefully will tell us what we need to do here in the diocese. So I'm gonna happily turn it over to you, Dr. Meeks.
Thank you. And could you let me know when we get to 7:30? I will try to keep my eye on the time, but sometimes it gets away from me. It's so good to be with you. And I'm probably not going to tell you what you need to do, but I will give you some inspiration, I hope, and maybe point you in some ways, some directions that might be helpful for you. I'm always excited to learn when dioceses are taking this work up and trying to find creative and innovative ways to work for building beloved community and seeking to find a pathway to racial healing. That's exciting to me, and it's hopeful to me because I believe that the Center for Racial Healing should be put out of business by having the whole church function as it needs to function. If the church would be stepping up to the plate and doing the work that needs to be done, then there would be no reason to have these special entities of commissions and centers and things to do this work, because it would be happening as it's supposed to in the midst of our conducting the business, God's business in the church. I want to say that the Center for Racial Healing is 3 years old now, and we have this very beautiful new website that I would like to invite all of you to visit. All you need to do is go to Center for Racial Healing. If you just type that in your browser, the website will come right up, and you will be able to find resources there and things that I think that will be helpful for you. Also want to encourage you to send us information about these programs that you've done and any other programs that you have done that you would like to share with the wider church. We are trying to create a resource bank on the website. So we're asking dioceses from around the church to share information about what you're doing or things that you found that could be really helpful to other people. And we are recording those things diocese by diocese, province by province, so that when you come to our website, you can actually find them because they're put up in a systematic way. I think that part of the problem that we have in the country is that many people are doing good work in many places, but sometimes it's difficult to find out about it. Our networks are not very good, and we reinvent wheels that don't need to be reinvented because we didn't know somebody was doing something. And if we could find out that information, we could be in touch with them, and perhaps we could enhance our work and theirs too by being collaborative rather than being in our kind of own little silo trying to start something. So I think we've got a good bit of work to do around just learning more about partnerships and collaboration within the church around this work. Sadly, what I sometimes experience is people feeling a little protective of what they're doing or a little competitive. And I want to say very straightforwardly and very clearly, as the director of the Absalom Jones Center for Racial Healing, there's enough racism to go around. And you don't have to worry about us running out of racism anytime soon. And so I think that we don't need to worry about competition because we will always have plenty to do. And the more we can work together, the more we can collaborate, diocese across diocese, parishes across parishes, denominations across denominations, and people in general reaching out to each other, the better, because the more we collaborate, the more we try to build bridges, the more closely we come to being who God wants us to be. And it's really important for us to keep that in mind. I've been a little bit disheartened by some of the ways in which we allow our egos to get in the way of doing this work. And I believe that that is something that we need to take some deep breaths about and move on down the road from, and really start realizing that the work of trying to save lives that are being lost because we have created these systems that marginalize people, denigrate people, and actually end up costing people their lives. We have created these systems that are indefensible, and then we protect them by getting caught in some of these processes that don't lead to health and wellness, but lead more to us just kind of polarizing ourselves again around a different issue and thinking that that polarization is justified because it's something we've come up with that's a little bit different. No polarization is justified in the Lord's church. The Lord intends for us to be one body, one group of people, trying to love each other, trying to care for each other, trying to really find the pathway to health. And I think that is so critical for all of us, and particularly those of us that are people of faith, to really take some deep breaths and reimagine the work and get ourselves on a better track. I think that's one of the first and biggest things that we have to do going forward. Before we got started, I was eavesdropping on the conversation that was just happening, and someone was talking about the fact that they had just read the book Caste and that they don't talk about race. And then someone said, yeah, because it's a made up thing. And I was thinking to myself, it is a made up thing, but it's a made up thing that we have allowed to divide us across the centuries and across so many different groups of people. We have allowed it to become the reason not to build communities. We have allowed it to feed the genocidal practices that existed here in this country from the 15th century, when the explorers set foot in this part of the earth and decided that the native people that they found here were not deserving of life, and that they could do whatever they wanted to them because they were so alien, and because they were here and didn't look like them and didn't talk like them, and because they were different. And so we set out on a path of killing off over 100 million people because of difference, because of this illusion that we've made up. And then we went on to the practice of bringing the Africans and enslaving them because of this illusion. And then just this past summer, we took little children from their mothers and put them in cages at our borders because of this illusion, because this stuff we've made up, this way of separating ourselves and dividing ourselves into categories, and then assigning value according to those silly divisions that we've come up with. And God is not pleased with us, because God is not the God of that kind of division. So I've thought about this so much all of my life. I'll be 75 years old in February. I've been doing this work since I was a kid in college. So I've been doing this work for more than 50 years. I've been thinking about it very hard for the last 25 or 30 years, just trying to make sense out of how did we really get here? How did we really get here? And it is a complicated process that has brought us to this place. But it boils down to making some decisions about the nature of reality that I think that are not as complex as we would like to think they are. I think that one of the things that we have to really begin to consider is what do we think about the nature of creation? Do we really think that there are a lot of gods that have created all kinds of different folks that are valued at different levels? Some people that look brown, or some people that look black, or some people that look white, or some people that look whatever other way they look. And that those people are valued on the basis of how they look, and that there's some God somewhere that created them, but it's not the same one that created the ones of us that are really the right folks. Is that our understanding of the nature of the creation? Is that the cosmology that we are basing our lives on? Or do we have a system that says that there is one God who has created everybody in God's image, and everybody is a worthy human being, of a worthy person, a worthy child of God that deserves to be treated in that way, that deserves to have access to the resources that he or she needs in order to live life fully and to become who God put them on the earth to be? We have to make our peace with which one of those things we believe. And we can say, well, of course, what silliness is this? Of course, we think there's one God. Of course, we're the Episcopal Church. We don't think we're not polytheistic, But then why don't we quit acting like it? Why don't we quit acting like we think that there are a bunch of little categories of gods running around that have created these people, some more valuable than others, and who deserve to be treated differently? Why don't we come to the bottom line, non-negotiable, that there is one God in the universe who has created everybody, and everybody is a beloved child of God, and everybody deserves to be treated that way. Everybody deserves to have access to the resources that will help them to become who God wants them to be. When God sent them to the earth, created them, however all that happens, then if we start there, then our behavior changes. We start to act differently toward people because we're not dealing with second and third and fourth class citizens. And we can other people on the basis of many things other than race. Race is the most obvious, and we like to use it, but I'm thinking that human beings are so peculiar that if we could wake up in the morning and everybody was exactly the same shade of blue, we would still find some way to other people, because we just seem to have some process in us that wants to do that. We just got to create hierarchies, and we want something to be better than something else. So I do think that that's part of the issue, that we have to overcome this necessity that it seems that we have to want to just be able to see somebody as being just a little bit less than somebody else. And if you think I'm joking about this, let me invite you to go back to when you were maybe like in middle school or high school, and if you had a class where you didn't quite do the studying you should have done for a test, and you didn't quite do well on the test, but you were better when you found out that somebody else did worse than you. You know, you didn't do well and you felt bad about it, but you felt worse. You felt better when you found out you didn't make the worst grade, the lowest grade. So there's something about that in human beings that we have to work with, we have to try to overcome. But I think that if we spend enough time interrogating ourselves and engaging ourselves, that we can actually get over some of that stuff of just wanting there to be hierarchies and wanting to have somebody be just a little bit lower than we are. But othering is the issue that we have to really delve deep into. And it's the propensity to want to other, and then to have systems that justify the othering, because you know human beings like to try to make sense out of stuff even when it's nonsensical. You know, the system of white supremacy is a nonsensical system, but we try to make it, we try to clean it up, we try to dress it up, we try to make it defensible, we want it to make sense to us. So we go around with this hierarchical structure in our heads and the necessity to do that, and then we want to create some justification for it. So let me encourage you to think about this in some of these ways. We have been we have been dropped in the middle of the pandemics era, the pandemic of COVID-19, the pandemic of racial unrest, the pandemic of a climate that's sick and tired of us and ready to just spit us out. An earth that said, you have been abusing me and being bad stewards, and here you're now paying with fires and floods and storms. We're sitting in the middle of this chaos, this chaotic time. And I cannot tell you how many emails, how many phone calls have come to me saying, oh, what do we do? You know, how are we going to go forward? We've got, everything is just in such a mess. And you're absolutely right. And my response has been, sit down, take some deep breaths, and see what God would have you do. Because I think that we have gotten away with a lot in this country, in this church, in this world. We have gotten away with a lot. We have done a lot of othering and abusing and marginalizing and having these systems that denigrate people, and the church is not exempt. The church is complicit. So let me be clear. And I mean the Episcopal Church and the whole church, all of the denominations have participated in this whole process of othering and reaffirming these structures that set people into these boxes, and then tries to make it all seem like it somehow makes sense. But what might be happening here to us as a people? What might God be trying to do with what's going on? You know, I'm not here to say that God has caused any of this. I'm not getting into that trying to figure all that stuff out is way above my pay grade. So I'm not going to be trying to figure it out. What I know is that we are here. We got here, however we got here, in the middle of these pandemics. And you can look at this situation as a situation to just lament about, though while lamenting is really good, and you should do it. Once you get through lamenting, you have to figure out what you're going to do. So I think that we need to do whatever lamenting we need to do. We need to do that. But seems to me that this period is about more than just being immobilized, being scared, being crazy, being angry, and lamenting. Or, you know, being tired of not seeing your friends and can't go out to eat and having your life flipped upside down. All of us are tired of all of that. But what is this whole time about beyond all of that? And I want to suggest that it is about an invitation. It is about an invitation that's being given to God's people and to all people, whether everybody's God's people, whether they know it or not. But those of us that are people of faith have made some commitments to walk with God in a certain kind of way. And I think we're being asked to take a different look at the way we see reality, to interrogate ourselves about many things, and to ask ourselves, are we on the path that we need to be on? Oh yes, this talk is directly related to racial healing, because you see, no racial healing is going to occur until we do some of this inner interrogating and pulling away some of those structures inside of ourselves that makes it easy for us to keep on othering other people. The parts of ourselves that we denigrate, the parts of ourselves that we don't want to own up to, the parts of ourselves that we don't like too much. Any of those things that are there, that in part of what I like to call the inner community, we have to engage with that in order to become the people out in the world that can engage with the otherness and all of the challenges that come toward us. Until we do some of this looking at ourselves more carefully and clearly, we're not going to be ready to do the outer work anyway. James Baldwin says, you cannot fix everything that you name, but you won't fix anything that you don't name. And we need to name some of our inner brokenness and how it's related to the outer expressions of brokenness and our own inability to really actively and engage that outer brokenness in ways that makes it possible for healing to occur. So this set of chaos, this peace, this space, this time, this chaotic time, I see as an invitation for this reimagination, for stopping where we are, standing still, listening with our hearts in new ways, thinking about what have I been doing that needs to be reimagined, that needs to be interrogated. And some of it doesn't need to be reimagined, it needs to be gotten rid of. You know, some things can be reimagined and can be redeemed, and some things need to be allowed to die. We are experiencing, I heard in the news the other day, I don't know if this is still the correct statistic, 1 person every 35 seconds dying in this country. That's an amazing rate of death among us. I don't know of any time in my lifetime where there's been that kind of death rate going on. So by the time we end this time together tonight, how many folks will have died from COVID? In the midst of that kind of death and dying externally, it seems really clear to me that there is a need to clean up some inner death, because I live in this kind of psychological milieu that believes that what's going on inside of people has a lot to do with what's going on outside of people. What's going on in you has a lot to do with what's going on externally. And we have engaged in not telling the truth. We have engaged in pretense. We have engaged in setting up all kinds of ways in this country to get around telling the truth and being real and actually caring about everybody as a beloved child of God. And now we are being hit with the opportunity to choose to switch gears, to choose to see differently, to choose to become more loving and more kind. And my goodness, what a scary time. What a scary time. What a wonderful time. What a sad time. What a joyous time. You know, that is the way life works, always bringing us these paradoxes. Khalil Gibran says that if you flip over your sorrow, you'll find joy. And if you flip over your joy, you'll find sorrow. So here we are in this dance, in this chaos, and we get to try to work our way as carefully as we can to kind of the core of the chaos and take a seat and then say, what is the invitation? What do you want, Lord? And I know that God wants us to quit othering each other, whether it's on skin color, gender, position, education, which side of town you were born on, what you think, what's your this, what's your politics, who did you vote for? God wants us to stop all of that foolishness, all of it, because we have allowed it to lead us to a place where death is running us down on from every side. And in order to stop the death and dying, we've got to stand up and say yes to life in some new ways. So how do we do that here in the midst of everything that's happening? We haven't, I guess everybody in the Episcopal Church is being obedient and nobody is meeting inside of your building. So everything's all upside down. We're having to try to figure out how to do church without being in the building. And that just has blown our minds because we're so wedded to church being the building rather than being the gathered body. And so anywhere the gathered body is, there is the church. But we got ourselves in that rut. So we've got that rut to deal with. And then we've got all this polarization within the walls of the church or the lack of the walls of the church. Too many churches that are in our own communion, people who think if we just quit talking about race, we won't have a problem. How many times have I heard that? We just talk about it too much and that's why we have a problem. No, that's not why we have a problem. We have a problem because we have a structure in our country that's indefensible and we are trying to figure out how to finesse it and tweak it and get around changing it. And we're trying to how to make it work. And it's not something that we ought to be trying to make work. We need to be trying to reconstruct. We need to be saying it is time for liberation for all of God's people. And then the question becomes, what does that have to do with me? What do I have to do so that everybody can be free? What do I have to do personally so that everybody can be free? And I think one of the big things I have to do is be willing to let things be different. Because we all of us, we're all in the same boat. We're human beings, we want difference, but we don't like change. You know, could you just let things get different, but please don't ask me to be any different. Let me just keep on doing what I've been doing and let the world get better. Well, there's this funny little mess that's called be the change you want to see. You know, if we want to see change, then are we willing to be in it? And how are we willing to be in it? So as you look at this invitation that's coming from this period of chaos, you ask yourselves, as I ask myself over and over and over, what do you want of me, God, in this particular moment? What are you asking me to do? Who are you asking me to be? What do you want me to let go of? What needs to die so something else can be born? How can I become who you're trying to get me to be now? Because you see, whoever we were 9 months ago, we can't be those people anymore. Because 9 months of death and dying and destruction and all kinds of things have happened, as well as all kinds of wonderful possibilities for us to do many things have been presented to us. And so we are different people. And 9 months from now, we'll be different again. And so the best way to get ready for 9 months from now is to really engage right now. To see what's being asked of us. What do we need to do? What are the ways that I need to answer the question? Who do you want me to be? What do you want me to do? Where do you want to send me, Lord, even in the midst of not being able to go anywhere? Where do you want me to go on Zoom? Where do you want me to go in email? Where do you want me to go on a text message or telephone call? What do you want me to say? How do you want me to feel and think? How do you want me to build bridges? What is being asked of you? What is the invitation? I don't think that I can talk about this as an invitational time too much, because I realized in the beginning when we first had to shut everything down, that there were a good number of people who thought that if we could just keep our heads down long enough, we just get past all of this and we get back to normal, whatever normal was. Well, there's not going to be any going back. We can't go back. We cannot go back. By the time we get to, they say, early spring, 300,000 or 400,000 of us will have died. So there's no going back. Millions of people with no work. There's no going back. We continue to have the racial divide right in front of us, but we keep walking away from it as if it goes away. You know, I was thinking this weekend that I need to write a piece that says George Floyd is still dead, because it's almost as if we forgot that he died. You know, we're good at that. For a hot minute, we can be all up in arms about it, but then something else comes and we're up in arms about that. And the thing back here that we were up in arms about has taken a back seat. We people of faith have got to be better than that. We've got to stay the course. We've got to hold on to the difficult. One of my favorite poets, Rainer Maria Rilke, says that we like to organize our lives around the easy and the easiest of the easy. We like to organize our lives around the easy and the easiest of the easy. But the real task is to hold to the difficult. The real task is to hold to the difficult. So what is this invitation to hold to the difficult about? We don't get to just pick another cause next week, because it looks like COVID's not going anywhere for a while, and we know racism isn't going anywhere. And we have to hold to the difficult. And how do you do that? You know, how do you do that and hold on to your own sanity and hold on to your own sense of joy and peace? How do you do that as an obedient child of God? It is complicated, and I understand that. And if you're like me, you go up and down. Some days you're better than others in this space that we're being asked to live in, but we're being asked to live in it, and we're being asked to live in it faithfully. And we're being asked to get ourselves to the core of the storm so we can sit quietly and hear what we're supposed to do. And it is about racial healing. How do you get well? How do you get well? My favorite piece of scripture is the story of Jesus at the pool of Bethsaida, when that gentleman is lamenting to Jesus about not being able to get in the pool, because when the angel comes to shake the water up so that people can be healed, nobody will help him to get in the pool. And, you know, I would have been just right there with him, gnashing my teeth, saying, yeah, Jesus, these people ought to be ashamed of themselves, and I can't help him because he's too heavy or something. And Jesus says, do you want to be healed? Isn't that interesting? Rather than lamenting about what you don't have, can you get clear about your intention? So the question then comes back to me and to you and to all of us is, do we want to be well? Do we want to be well? Do we want racism to be healed, to be erased, to be eradicated? And if so, what are we willing to do to make it happen? So when I'm a person who has rheumatoid arthritis, and I've had it now for nearly 40 years. So I have learned a lot about how to answer that question. Do I want to be well? Because I can't take shortcuts. And when I do take shortcuts, I pay for them. And so every day I have to make a decision. How well do I want to be? You know, do I want to have this piece of pecan pie now and deal with the effects of sugar in my body? Or do I decide that I'd much rather feel better tomorrow? Do I want to be well? It has to be made over and over. So there are these questions we've got to interrogate ourselves here as we think about this and as we go forward. I don't know exactly what all your conversations have been in terms of talking about race, but I want to say that we have a lot of conversations about race that are very non-essential, that don't get us anywhere. We stir around at the bottom of the edges, not the bottom, at the edges of the issue in ways that does not lead us to getting to the core. And in order to get to the wellness piece, to get where we need to go, we've got to get to the core. White people have to get to the core of, do you want to be free more than you want to hold on to the benefits of whiteness in the United States of America? And Black and brown people have to get to, do you want to be free more than you want to hold on to internalized oppression and whatever the stuff is that we can hold on to, so we don't let ourselves get well too, as Black and brown people? All of us have to ask ourselves, do we want to be well? And do we want to be well enough? Do we want to be well badly enough to do whatever it takes? And to do whatever it takes for however long it takes, to hold to the difficult. You know, I had to come to terms with that if I wanted to be a completely liberated person, that I couldn't other anybody. Nobody. There's nobody who can be a candidate for othering in my life if I want to be well. Now, when I start trying to other somebody, I need to ask myself, what am I trying to hide from? Why am I not facing up to something that somebody else needs to take responsibility for, this particular thing that I probably needed to take responsibility for? It becomes a very different enterprise, this business of working for racial healing, when you start connecting yourself to the projections that we make. You know, have you ever been driving down the road somewhere and somebody's driving in front of you in a particular kind of car, and you start making up a story in your head about them? You know, you start telling yourself, you start wondering about them, and you start imagining where they live. And, you know, have you ever done that? If you've done that, it's called projection. And most people have done that. And that's kind of not a big deal because you don't know them. And when you go on to wherever you're going, you forget about them and you forget about the projection. But when people start making projections upon people that they have to interact with and won't let those projections go away, you make up stories about people, you decide who people are before you really know who they are. That's what racism allows you to do, to decide a whole group of people deserve to be treated a certain kind of way, mostly based on stuff you made up in your head, or stories that you were told, or bad history that you read. You know, that's mostly what it, and then as you put it out there on the folks, and then the folks sort of try to stand up to those projections. And so then you got the system and you got this mess that we have now. C.G. Jung, who's a Swiss psychiatrist whom I love so much because he helps me to understand this inner journey stuff, said that if everybody would withdraw those projections back to themselves and claim ownership of them and deal with them personally, that there would be no evil in the world. Now, I don't quite go that far with Jung because I believe that evil really is a system and that it's real and all that. But I think that if we would take care of withdrawing our projections and taking responsibility for ourselves, that evil would be way weaker. That evil would be weakened and we would have less problems with it if all of us would just stand up and say, let me deal with myself. I'm trying to figure out right now in this particular moment, what is the energy, this energy that's out here running around all over the country that's just, that has just invited evil to come and just stand up and beat its chest. You know, we've just invited evil to come stand in front of us and beat on yourself, because people are just saying anything and making up anything. And it's like, you don't have to take any responsibility for anything. And you can just make up a tale. I can just tell you that it's blue outside. The sun is blue, and you're just supposed to believe me because I said it. You know, But if we would just sit with ourselves for a minute and say, what craziness have we walked into? And let me see if I can walk out of it. That would be an important way to withdraw some of our projections. And the things that we can do ourselves, because you can't really control other people. So the very thing that you can do is work with yourself. You know, look at yourself and say, I won't engage in that kind of craziness. You know, I won't engage in making up tales about people and then sticking to it as if it's the truth when I don't really know whether it is or not. I will be careful how I handle information if it's skeptical, because all of this has to do with othering. And othering is at the core of racism, at the very core. So you don't want to talk about, you know, well, your skin color is an illusion, because if you skin me, I'll be bloody. And if you skin us all, we'll all be bloody. And then we won't know what race we are. That's right, but we're not going to be skinned. So we're walking around in our skins, and we get to identify each other, and we get to keep on playing this silly game. So then I have got to stop seeing that person I wouldn't even know how to be trying to other you if you didn't have white skin or brown skin. Let me stop doing it, even though I see your skin. I see your skin and I say, yeah, you're a white person, but then what kind of heart do you have? What's in your heart? What makes you human? I don't know if you saw that lovely, funny little quirky movie called The Beast of the Southern Wild. Some of you may have seen it about after people in Louisiana after Hurricane Katrina. And the little film's got all kinds of sociological problems, but it's also a good little piece of art. And because you can use it to do a lot of uncovering some symbolic stuff. But there's a little, if you haven't seen it, there's a little character, one of the main little characters in there is this little girl called Hush Puppy. And she's just this little pint-sized thing that's running around trying to make sense out of the world. And she lives in a pretty pitiful world that's filled with poverty and violence and a lot of craziness. But the thing that she does that's so amazing is that she goes around listening to the heartbeat of everything. So she gets these birds and she listens to their heartbeat, and she goes in this nursing home, and it's a clinic really, and there's somebody hooked up to life support, and she goes over and puts her head on their chest to see if their heart's beating, because she says she thinks that everything's got a heartbeat and everything is just like everything else, and everything is, going around saying they're hungry and I gotta poop, and this is her little 5-6-year-old philosophical analysis of the universe, is that everything's got a heartbeat, and everything basically that's got a heartbeat is just like everything else that's got a heartbeat. What if we decided to quit othering people and started being more concerned about what is in your heart? When you meet somebody, instead of talking about where did you go to school and where do you live and where do you work and who's your family, and let me see what hierarchical box I can put you in. What if we could talk about, what do you think is beautiful? What makes you happy? What's the nature of your heart? What's in your heart? What if we had conversations with people about things like that instead of all this external stuff that doesn't end up to mean anything anyway? We're just trying to see what box folks can go in. And that's othering. It gets to be othering. So if I can't put you in the right box, there's a fair amount of judgment in that kind of conversation too, and we aren't even supposed to be going around trying to judge people, but we do a pretty good job of it, and we make it seem all defensible, don't we? Because it's just small talk. It's just small talk that's denigrating. It's just small talk that's setting up in our minds how I'm supposed to relate to you in some way other than maybe what God had in mind. Because maybe just because you came from you slept under the bridge last night, it might not mean that I'm supposed to be looking down on you. It might not mean that I'm supposed to be thinking that you're less than. It might mean that God is asking me to hold you in my heart in some special way. That could be what it means. And if I bothered to pay attention to that way, I might have the great grand blessing of holding someone in my heart that would bring blessings to me as I brought blessings to them. Howard Thurman, if you don't know Howard Thurman, I always say, and hardly ever talk to any group of people anytime, anywhere without talking to them about Howard Thurman. And because Howard Thurman is such an important person as far as I'm concerned, in terms of this journey of trying to make sense out of this crazy world that we have been asked to engage in, a wonderful world. It's crazy and wonderful and all kinds of things. And upside down and inside out, we get turned as we try to engage it in any kind of really good way. Howard Thurman says that the only place you can find refuge is in another person's heart. And so you need to make sure that your heart is a swinging door. Make sure that your heart is a swinging door. So my heart's open and I'll let you in. Your heart's open and you'll let me in. When I meet you, I don't know anything about you, and I engage you from a position of being curious about what is the nature of your heart. Not where you went to school, who your mama is, or did you steal a peanut butter sandwich when you were in kindergarten. I don't care. None of those things matter. What matters is what's in your heart. I think that the last thing I want to say before I stop, so you can start asking questions or making comments. I think we find ourselves right now, right this minute, as we sit here together tonight on the screen, in this gathering, we find ourselves being given a grand invitation to seek the ground in the middle, the ground in the middle between the extremes. You know, we got folks over here and folks over here yelling and screaming at each other and trying to say my way's the way and my way's the way. And if I can't have my way, then I'll just soon have you be dead. And, you know, it's just a bunch of nonsense. So I think that we are being given an invitation to seek the ground in the middle, to listen, to be the people who can stand in the middle and bring and invite those extremes in to say, tell us who you are. Tell us what's in your heart. You know, some of these folks that are so full of vitriol and so um, angry and frightening in some ways, they're so afraid at the very core of themselves. So absolutely afraid. And that again fuels the fires of othering, that fuels the fires of racism. So if you're out here trying to get the racism genie back in the bottle, you really needed to start here getting the fear genie back in the bottle, because the fear genie is projecting all this stuff out here. And sometimes when people are being the most hostile when it comes to racial things, if you back them up to how did you get here and what are you so afraid of, it becomes a completely different conversation. And we're the church, we're in the business of healing. We're not in the business of retribution. We're not looking for vengeance. We're not even looking for affirmation of being right. We're looking for how to open the door so people can get well. You know, I mean, somebody just jumped all over me the other day because um, I was being trying to be compassionate about people, poor white folks who are racist and vitriolic and dangerous to some extent. But until I'm able to understand and appreciate where they're coming from, I don't get to try to tell them what to do about anything. You know, my job is not to be judgmental and trying to send them off to a fire pit somewhere. My job is to understand and be compassionate and listen to what God has to say about how to interact with God's child, with God in that person. Now, I'm not just rushing right out to take somebody from the Ku Klux Klan to lunch. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that's not what I'm talking about. But I am talking about having a willingness to engage people where you find them. And in order to do that, you have to engage yourself. In order to do the outer work, you got to do the inner work. There is no substitute. And when we have tried to substitute it, it doesn't go anywhere. We've done so much flailing our arms around race in this country. And look where we are in 2020. Look where we are. We've been working at this for how long? All my life and all of your lives. And look at where we are. So it won't hurt us to entertain the possibility that maybe we ought to try something else. Maybe we ought to try to see if there's some other approaches, if there's some other ways to go about this and thinking about this. So I want to submit to you that if you think that your job is to just run right out and fix something about race, let me ask you to sit in your room and look at yourself and see if there's any relationship between what you're trying to go out and fix and any part of yourself. And if there's any inkling that there's something in you that you don't want to quite own up to yet, so you're just going to take off and go fix somebody somewhere else, then maybe you need to stay home till you come to grips with that. Come to grips with being intentional, being grounded and really being sent, being grounded and really asking the right questions, being grounded. And this is not an excuse not to go work. This is, you know, people always want to talk to me about if you do all this inner work, then you just don't go do the outer work. You know, we have to quit playing games with ourselves. You got to do both. We have to do the inner work and we got to do the outer work. And actually, if you do good inner work, you can't help yourself. You'll have to do the outer work because you'll get you will run yourself out into the world to do the work that needs to be done because you can't help yourself. So I don't think you have to be afraid of missing out on the opportunity to go be an activist. But you can't go be an activist as an excuse for not doing the inner journey too, which is what happens a whole lot, particularly in places where people have a lot of resources and people, you know, got a lot of smart folks, and we know how to organize and we know how to plan things. That's all well and good, and you need to do those things. Don't do it at the sacrifice of not doing your inner work. If you really want the work to be sustainable, if you want the work to be authentic, if you want the work to be something that ultimately leads to creating spaces where God's transformation can occur, it's got to be grounded in some deep realities of the folks who are trying to do the work. Okay. I think I actually kept up with the time, and it looks like it's 7:29 and we have a half hour till 8 o'clock. And I want to hear questions and comments and just see how people have taken all these little, it's like this was, what is the tapas meal, where you have a lot of little bites of different things. So this is a tapas talk where you've got some bites here of different things that you can take from the plate and see how you might want to engage with it.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Meeks. So if folks have questions, we're a small enough group. I think it might be great that you could unmute yourself. In fact, Valerie, it's just nice to hear, you know, folks' voices. So if you're able to unmute yourself, Valerie, you want to ask the question, and then someone else after that, you know, we can do that. Or if you raise your hand frantically, Jane or I can unmute you as well.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Meeks. Thank you. And this gives me an opportunity to correct my bad grammar in the chat. So this is good. As you were speaking, it clearly spoke to the individual work we need to do. And obviously in society and in the church at large, we have institutional work. But it does make me wonder, sort of at the parish level, which is the level most of us are operating in terms of where we try to understand God and what God's word is to us. do you have thoughts or examples of how parishes have engaged and what the role at the parish level can be to support both the individual work and the institutional work? Does that make sense?
It does. And I think that one of the biggest things parishes have to do is get out of the either or construct, that you're either out doing missions or else you're in doing book studies. You know, so you have to learn how to do book studies and missions at the same time, I think, you know, or do a book study that's connected to the mission work that you're trying to do. You know, learn how to do collaborative stuff rather than, because we operate a lot in either or, that we're doing this with the, you know, we started this and we're doing all these things now, and when we get done with that, we're going to go do that. Well, it would have been so much richer if we'd done them together. And so I don't know what to say beyond that, because I think the other thing you have to do is stay open to discernment and see where God will lead you. God is funny about filling up your plate if you hold it up and say, it's empty, tell me, what do you want to put on it? You know, so you may know the story of Sojourner Truth, who could neither read nor write. You know Sojourner Truth, of course. So when Sojourner Truth was traveling, she couldn't read. So she would get to a fork in the road and she didn't know what the road sign said because she couldn't read it. So she would let go of the mule lines and tell God, send me where you want me to go. So I would like to see more parishes coming together and with intention and resources and capacity and saying to God, where do you want us to go? And see where you end up. Because I don't know where you'll end up, but I guarantee you God will answer you. I can guarantee you that you will end up with more things to do than you ever thought were possible, because if you really will listen. And part of our problem is we just don't want to listen. You know, we don't. We think because we're smart, we know how to do stuff. And we've been out here trying to do it and making some pretty good messes. And it might be, the best example I have is of me trying to put together these things you buy that you have to put together, you know, and I don't like to read directions. And that is such a formula for a mess, because if you don't read the directions, you end up with leftover screws and leftover parts, and you don't know what to do with them because you didn't, you know, we're caught in that because we think I can figure this out. I know how this goes, and it doesn't go that way at all. So.
All right, looking around. Anyone else want to unmute themselves and ask a question?
Sure, I'll go. It's Cassandra Mordecai from St. Luke's. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you, Dr. Meeks. Very enlightening, and I took a few notes. And I like what you said about ultimately creating spaces where God's transformation can occur. And I'm just thinking about what that would look like. And I like that you mentioned sustainability, because I've been involved in a couple of conversations on race programs in different towns. And what I found that is, once the committee structure changes and the people change, the work stops and starts over. And in some cases, they no longer have a conversation on race or any race or diversity programs. They just start over, and like they think that 2 sessions of conversation on race and that's it, we've been healed. But I'm glad you brought up George Floyd, because the situation that created George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Tamir Rice and everything else, that still exists, because that's structural racism, institutional racism, and it will be there forever unless there's a sea change. And we can't just keep meeting and talking and starting over without having sustainable change.
Mm-hmm. And I think some of that has to do with people having a plan. You know, we get caught up in thinking that book studies and film studies and field trips. And then we're at the end of what we know how to do. And we have to
Mhm.
use those things as catalysts to help us get on down the road. But we have to be open to going deeper and really finding out what else do we need to do. I'm a educator, so I believe in education. I believe people need to read. I believe book studies are wonderful. I've written a bunch of books myself. I think all that's very wonderful. But they have got to be coupled with this open heart and this letting go of the mule lines and saying, where do we go now, Lord? Now that I've read those 5 books and been and done those 5 film studies and gone on those 6 pilgrimages, what now? Where do I go? What do I do? And and that question will be answered. It will be answered if it's asked in absolute honesty. And parishes have to deal with this. The church has to deal with this. That we don't get to just do all of our things to make us feel like we're really working on this issue and then we can just quit. That's not an option. The other more critical piece of this is we have to understand this work is spiritual formation work. This work is about our spiritual formation. This work is about being who God wants us to be. It's not some extraneous thing that's sitting over here that we get to do if we feel like it or when we feel like it or whatever. It is directly related as much as paying our pledge and participating in the Eucharist and showing up to be a part of the ministry of the Lord's church. This work of racial healing, this work of breaking down the barriers that kill people. Racism kills people. Sexism kills people. All these isms. Oppression kills people. So our job as people of faith is to be about doing something about structures that take life from people. And it's not optional. It's not optional. We don't get to decide to do it for a while and then quit doing it because it has to do with our own being well. No, it's not so small as it has to do with, if you die, is God gonna take you into God's arms and love you? Of course, God's gonna love you, but you didn't do what you could have done while you were on the earth if you don't engage this work. You didn't do all of it. And I don't know what happens in the next life. You might get a second chance at it across the veil, or whatever. I mean, that's like, those are mysteries that thank God I don't have to figure out. All I have to do is keep on being faithful. But we do have to be concerned about systemic issues and doing what we can do about them while we're doing the inner work. It goes together. And we can't be lazy about it. And we can get lazy quickly. Let me see the shortest, like Rilke says, we're organizing our lives around the easiest of the easy. I just love that line. When I saw it, I just nearly jumped up and down thinking, boy, did you nail it. The easiest of the easy, not just easy, but the easiest of it. But the real test is hold into the difficult. Hold into the difficult. And that is not to walk around being morbid and depressed or anything. It is to be grounded in the truth that God didn't put us here to just kind of flit through life. We've got work to do. And some of it's complex and complicated, and some of it's whimsical, but most of it is about trying to save people from death. There are a lot of people that are suffering in ways that are beyond our imagination, and we have a responsibility to be about caring about that and doing something about it. I did a webinar last night that I would invite you to watch on our YouTube channel in a couple of days. It'll be up. If you just go to the Absalom Jones YouTube channel, you can find this webinar called Women of Color Hold Up More Than Half the Sky with Dr. Kelly Brown Douglas and Bishop Phoebe Roth and a Native Indigenous woman, a Latina woman, a bunch of fantastic women last night talking. And Dr. Brown Douglas said, you know, we hear a whole lot of stuff these days about white fragility and uncomfortableness when it comes to race. And Black folks too, and brown folks don't want to talk about race either. I mean, it can be a tough subject sometimes. But the thing about it is, in that I loved her point about this, if your temporary discomfort can lead to somebody's life being saved, or somebody's life which is being threatened by these systems that need to be torn down, if the only price you have to pay for that is temporary discomfort, then so be it. Because it's not so big of a deal for any of us to be this uncomfortable for a little bit in order to help somebody whose life is going to be taken from them. If I could have been uncomfortable for a year, it would have been worth it to save George Floyd's life. It would have been worth it to save Ahmaud Arbery's life. It would have been worth it to save Breonna Taylor's life. If I could be uncomfortable in a conversation, if I could have been in uncomfortable conversations and it resulted in saving their lives, then I needed to be willing to bear the discomfort. And when we start thinking that way, we kind of get off our horses and start realizing, hey, you know, I how much do I want to pay for comfort?
We have a question from Marcia. Marcia, you want to go next?
Sure, thank you. Dr. Meeks, first of all, thank you very much for being here and sharing your incredible wisdom. I have a comment, it's not a question. I've taken EFM many years prior, and I'm taking the Old Testament portion of it again this year. And I just wanted to comment on the fact that in the Joseph stories is the beginning of what I see as othering in the biblical context. When he comes into Egypt and brings his fellow Israelites in to save them from famine, and they begin to multiply, the Egyptians are suddenly wondering, what do we do with all of these people? They're outnumbering us. This isn't right. Mm-hmm. And that seemed to have been the beginning of domination and subjugation. I just thought it was an interesting point in these times, and reading the Old Testament during these times resonates so much with a lot of what's going on right now. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Well, thank you, Marcia. You have to be careful with the Hebrew scriptures, with all of them, really. You have to be careful because they have some cultural overtones that you need to interrogate carefully.
Great. Martin, you're unmuted. Did you have a comment or a question? Okay, we can't hear you, Martin. Sorry. Father Paul does. Martin, we got you. Go ahead, Martin.
I thought Dr. Meeks' words were very inspiring, but to me, if the value of human life has to include the lives of the unborn, and if that's been abandoned by the church.
Martin, it's really hard to hear you, Martin. I'm sorry. Do you want to type it in the chat, maybe?
Yeah, I kind of tried to do that.
Sorry, I was trying hard to, but I can't.
Yeah, we can't hear you at all. Let's go to Father Paul, and then Martin, if you want to type it in the chat, that would be fine.
And then Miss Baker down here, is your hand up? Yeah, after that.
All right, Father Paul, and then Yolanda, sure.
Okay, Father, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, good. Dr. Meek, thank you so much. It's such a insightful and inspiring presentation, and I've been taking notes up 2 pages here. So
oh my goodness gracious.
Yeah, what I mean, of course, there are many questions that I wanted to ask. Valerie brought it up, and then many others as well. What I'm stuck with and wanting to hear your words is on be the change you want to see. And of course, I think it is said by someone you quoted in the book.
Yeah,
But then
Gandhi.
I think it's nothing but it's the golden rule, I guess, right? Now, from your perspective on as well as your experience point of view, I'm kind of still, on the work of how do we transfer these theological concepts to a sociological construct within our parish settings.
Mhm. Well, the quote comes from Gandhi, who said, "Be the change you want to see."
Absolutely right.
And I don't know if it's original with Gandhi, but he gets credit for it.
Right.
So
Well, all the time he says, I like Christ, not, I like Christ and Bible, but not Christians, some of those kinds of
right,
statements he has made it. Yes.
right. But I think the thing about it is that if we really turn ourselves over to God, then God transcends sociology and psychology and all of those things. That does not mean that that way of looking at the world is not a good way. I mean, I'm a social worker. I have a social work degree. I study Jungian psychology. I appreciate all of those ways of looking at the world. But the most important way of looking at the world has to do with how I think God wants me to see the world. And God wants me to see all of God's children as beloved and worthy and 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 people who have a right to every good and perfect thing. And so my job then is to spend my life working to help make the world be that place where that can happen, be that place where spaces are created so people can be who they are really. People can tell the truth about themselves and be loved and accepted and appreciated. That's what the church is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a place where you can stumble in your ragtagness, and nobody's gonna say, "Why are you ragtag?" Everybody's just gonna embrace you. You're gonna be accepted. You're gonna be loved. You're gonna be it's okay. There's no judgment. There's no um, what's the matter with you? Why aren't you doing this? And no sense of you need to be guilty about stuff. That's not what the church is supposed to be. That doesn't mean, I hope you don't hear me sounding like people don't have to have any accountability, because I really do believe in responsibility and accountability. I just believe that we need to make spaces where people can come to grips with doing that themselves, and we can stop trying to be accountable for folks. We can help people have the space so they can be accountable rather than us trying to do it for them or tell them what they need to be doing. So acceptance, I think whether you're trying to look at stuff through a sociological lens or a psychological lens or a theological lens, the bottom line is that you have to be accepting. You have to be, if your way of analyzing something leads you to a place of judgment and denigration, then you use the wrong analytical tool for the church. You used the wrong analytical tool if your analysis led you to judging and othering and categorizing, then the tool was wrong. And now it may be that the analyzer is the problem, but you do need to interrogate the process. So I don't know if that makes any sense to your question that you're asking, but I do think that.
I think you are beautifully bringing the narrative of what we believe and what we want to be in, like salt and light aspects of Christian life. From that point of view, I don't know if I'm pushing a little bit further. We are 2000 years old organization, Christianity 2020 years now, right? So we have practiced being a small number of people within the bigger society, being that salt and light, where we are able to influence the society with this concept of being like Christ and being the salt and being the light. Now, so I mean, are there any other program that we can do better in order to bring that non-judgmental values into our people, so that our salter is much more salty than what it is for these 2000 years?
Yeah. Okay. So, what I don't know. I hope I'm even understanding what you're asking, but I do believe that Jesus is, if we would really and truly engage what Jesus taught us, that the transformation would be phenomenal. That part of our problem is we've been playing around with being who Jesus asked us to be, rather than really trying to be that. We have tried to recreate Jesus in our own image too many times. And so,
Makes
I think
sense.
that I think what the church needs to do is to quit trying to invent Jesus and let Jesus invent us. I think for me that what you just said a minute ago, that's my sense about that. That, Bishop Michael said some weeks ago, we were in a conversation together, and he said we needed to quit asking what would Jesus do and start asking what did Jesus do. Because when we ask what would Jesus do, then we get to decide ourselves what we think Jesus would have done. When we ask what did Jesus do, we get to read the book and see what he did and go do it. And it's a completely different thing. And we much rather conjecture about what Jesus would do and let ourselves off the hook than to say, what did Jesus do, and go do it. I mean, like, laying your life down for somebody. Or if somebody asks you for your coat, you give them your cloak. What kind of nonsense is that, Jesus? Haven't you ever heard of stocks and bonds and savings accounts and all these things? You want me to live with 2 pairs of shoes, one, and give one away? You want me to have that attitude? You want me to love my enemies? Are you kidding me? So I mean, it's an outrageous way to live, really. I was talking to a priest the other day who said, they have this problem with folks in their parish getting all exercised over socialism. And I said, well, just introduce them to Jesus. And then if they get a clear understanding about Jesus, they'll be happy to be socialist, because it'll let them off the hook a little bit, because Jesus's way of being is so much more radical. We got all this chatter about socialism, sharing everything in common, and being willing to give everything for your sister and your brother. That's a pretty radical way to live, and most of us aren't ready to do it. So where is Miss Baker? I don't want you to get lost here, but before we run out of time.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yolanda, you're up. Take it away, Yolanda. There we go.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Hi. Yes.
Dr. Meeks, your voice reminds me of Maya Angelou. And thank you for your inspiring words.
Mhm.
I echo what has been repeated before in question form about what can we do and so forth. And my church has on its newsletter, what can one person do? And in this day and age, it's rare that we work in segregated places. So obviously, all of us are different on the streets, where we go right now, even during the pandemic. And the value of a smile, of just looking, well, now we're masked in most public places, but looking at people in the eye, which is something that in the past 8 months, I find very few people do. And how to encourage each other here to begin looking at people in the eye and smiling with the eye, recognizing the other, right? because we don't know if that person we looked at and acknowledged will go and look at somebody else and acknowledge that other person and do something good or prevent something bad. And in any of speaking to very fragile friends, one of the things that they would say, well, but I have a Black friend. And I'm saying, just one? Come on, come on. I know you only have one Puerto Rican friend because it's me, but I'm saying, come on, do a party, ask to be part of, say hello, say, God loves you. Well, maybe they'll look at you bad or so, maybe not.
Yeah.
I often say good morning or good afternoon or hello to people who I don't know. And I'm surprised only a few times when people don't say it back. I think that we ought to begin with even just recognizing and saying and doing at the beginning. What do you think, Dr. Meeks?
Well, one of the things I learned in working with my sisters and brothers who live outside without shelter is that they just so much appreciated when people would look them in the eye. That even if you didn't give them any money, if you passed by them on the street and you didn't choose to give them money, that you would look them in the eye and speak, acknowledge them as a human being, because you don't want to give them money, and then you don't look at them, and then you denigrate them and erase them. And that's like, okay, so you didn't help them and you also tried to make them invisible. Why do you need to do all of that? So sometimes I have money, sometimes I don't. But when I don't have, whether I have money or don't have money to give to them, I always look at them and say hello and make it a point, the same as I speak to anybody else. So I think you're absolutely right. Making that contact, that eye contact, that looking at people says, what's in your heart? Says, what's in your heart, rather than I know who you are because I see how you look. Which is what you're saying if you look at somebody and look off. Oh, I looked at you and you're not worthy of my engagement. So let me just avert my eyes from you. And it's such a small thing that we can do, acknowledging another person. It's just so small and everybody can do it. There's no reason why we can't do it. And when you were saying that, I was thinking how interesting. I hadn't thought about this until just a second when you were talking. Masks are making us have to look at, if we look at folks, we're going to see their eyes because there's nothing else to see except the mask. So maybe we'll see eyes a little bit more because of that. Maybe, I mean, we're just such strangers. We've got to be forced out in all kinds of ways to do the stuff that we probably needed to be trying to do in the first place. So I don't know how we're doing. Are we coming to a close here, or do we have time for? I don't want to miss anybody. If you've got something you just really feel you need to say.
Hi, Dr. Meeks. This is Andrew Wright. I'm the canon to the ordinary for Bishop Hughes, and unfortunately, I think we are out of time. So Father Jerry asked me if I would kind of wrap us up. I wanted to say how much I've appreciated everything you've had to say and the good questions we've had and everyone's engagement, but especially what you had to share with us. And I know that Bishop Hughes really wishes that she could have been here to have heard it herself. And she's so deeply committed and invested in this conversation and really values your work and your place being here with us. So thank you so much for being with us this evening.
I'm so glad to have been here. And I hope to see everybody again and be able to be in your diocese at some other time, either via Zoom or some other way. But it was good to be with you.
That would be absolutely wonderful. And thanks so much to the Namaste Commission for putting together the speaker series and ensuring that we've had this rich conversation over these 3 evenings of speakers. We're so thankful for your work as well, the Namaste. So we sure appreciate that. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Canon Margot Clark, who's going to pray us out. Canon Clark.
Good evening, everyone. We generally make a practice of using one of the prayers from our own Book of Common Prayer. However, Dr. Meeks mentioned the wonderful Howard Thurman, and my Howard Thurman is in my office, but I scrambled and found this on the Harvard University website where he was a professor. And it seemed to fit. This is called Our Little Lives by Howard Thurman. Our little lives are big problems. These we place upon your altar. The quietness in your temple of silence again and again rebuffs us. For some, there is no discipline to hold them steady in the waiting, and the minds reject the noiseless invasion of your spirit. For some, there is no will to offer what is central in the thoughts. The confusion is so manifest, there is no starting place to take hold. For some, the evils of the world tear down all concentrations and scatter the focus of the high resolves. We do not know how to do what we know to do. We do not know how to be what we know to be. Our little lives, our big problems, these we place upon your altar. Pour out upon us whatever our spirits need of shock of life, of release, that we may find strength for these days, courage and hope for tomorrow. In confidence, we rest in your sustaining grace, which makes possible triumph in defeat, gain in loss, and love in hate. We rejoice this day to say, our little lives, our big problems, these we place upon your altar. Go in,
Amen.
friends. Amen.
Thank you.
Amen.
Blessings.
Thank you, Dr. Meeks, so much. We really appreciate you.
Good night. Blessings to
I know.
everybody.
Blessings,
Good night.
everyone.
Good night.
Blessings. Good night. Great series.
Good night, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much. This has been fabulous.
Good
Thank
night,
you so
everyone.
much.
Bye, Kay.
Hello, Kay. Okay. You want to stop recording, Jane?
I think it'll stop once it turns off.
Jerry, I don't know the answer to your question.
Okay. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. See yous.
Bye-bye.